Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Updates here in a second, but just in no way, shape, or form can we play offensive football like that and try to win at a place like this. I did think our defense played.
The Minnesota Vikings are staring down the barrel of the most crucial offseason decision in franchise history, and what's about to unfold could either save this team or send them spiraling into another decade of mediocrity. Sources close to the organization reveal that head coach Kevin O'Connell has been harboring a secret obsession with a quarterback that most fans have already written off as a complete disaster. The whispers around the league are getting louder, the evidence is mounting, and Vikings faithful need to brace themselves for what could be the most polarizing move this franchise has made since trading for Sam Bradford. Picture this. It's Sunday Night Football, the bright lights illuminating U.S. Bank Stadium, and after the game ends, cameras catch Kevin O'Connell approaching Indianapolis Colts quarterback Anthony Richardson. The Vikings head coach, clearly impressed by something he saw, walks right up to the young signal caller and delivers 4 simple words that would later send shockwaves through the Vikings community when the footage resurfaced. "You're a bad dude." Richardson's response? A respectful "yes, sir," that hinted at mutual admiration between the two. This wasn't just some throwaway post-game pleasantry, folks. This was a glimpse into O'Connell's mind, a peek behind the curtain at what type of quarterback truly gets him excited. But that interaction from last season was merely the tip of the iceberg. If we rewind the tape even further, back to when Richardson was coming out of Florida as one of the most physically gifted quarterback prospects in recent memory, multiple reports from NFL insiders suggested that the Vikings were doing everything within their power to trade up and secure Richardson's services. The front office was reportedly willing to mortgage significant draft capital to move up the board and snag the quarterback with the cannon arm and elite athleticism. Though they ultimately couldn't make the move happen, the intention was crystal clear. Kevin O'Connell had identified his guy, and that guy was Anthony Richardson. Now let's connect the dots here because this pattern reveals everything about O'Connell's quarterback philosophy. Look at the archetype he consistently pursues. Big physical stature, howitzer arms, exceptional athleticism. Richardson fits that mold perfectly. Standing tall with the ability to make throws from angles and positions that most quarterbacks can only dream about. Fast forward to this past offseason when O'Connell again tried to orchestrate a trade up the draft board, this time targeting Drake May. Slightly different player, sure, but cut from remarkably similar cloth in terms of physical tools and athletic ability. The evidence is overwhelming. O'Connell has a type, and Richardson embodies everything he values in a franchise quarterback. So here's where things get absolutely wild. Despite having significant input on personnel decisions, despite his obvious affinity for Richardson's skill set, and despite the quarterback becoming available as the Colts have clearly moved on from their once prized prospect, a significant portion of the Vikings fan base and media are pushing hard for the team to pursue a completely different direction. The name being thrown around most frequently, Mac Jones. Yes, that Mac Jones, the former New England Patriots quarterback who has bounced around the league and represents everything that is safe, predictable, and ultimately limiting for a franchise desperate to break through to championship contention. Let's address the Anthony Richardson situation head on because there's no sugarcoating just how disastrous his NFL tenure has been thus far. The numbers are genuinely ugly. During the 2024 season, Richardson managed just 8 touchdowns against 12 interceptions, a ratio that would make any coaching staff nervous. His 19 big-time throws were offset by 15 turnover-worthy plays, and his adjusted completion percentage sat at a miserable 60.1%, well below the league standard for starting quarterbacks. Even if we look back at his limited 2023 sample size hoping to find signs of promise, we're met with 3 big-time throws against 4 turnover-worthy plays. The accuracy issues that plagued him at Florida have followed him to the professional level, and he has frequently looked lost navigating NFL defenses. Reports from inside the Colts organization have been even more damning than the statistics. Questions about Richardson's leadership have surfaced, with anonymous sources suggesting that he struggled to command respect in the huddle and failed to demonstrate the work ethic and football intelligence required of an NFL starting quarterback. His infamous decision to tap himself out of a game, citing fatigue, became a national story and raised serious concerns about his competitive drive. When a team benches a player they traded up to select in the first round after investing significant resources in his development, that tells you everything about how catastrophically things have gone wrong. The Colts moved on to veteran Joe Flacco, essentially admitting their mistake and cutting their losses on Richardson faster than almost anyone could have anticipated. So why on earth would the Vikings even consider taking on this project? Why would any rational front office look at Richardson's track record and think, yeah, that's our guy? Here's the counterintuitive logic that actually makes a surprising amount of sense when you really think about the Vikings' current predicament. If Minnesota trades for Richardson and hands him the starting job, there is absolutely zero chance this team ends up in NFL purgatory, that dreaded middle ground where you're not good enough to compete for championships but not bad enough to secure premium draft picks. Think about it this way. If Richardson somehow reaches even a fraction of his enormous potential, if the change of scenery and O'Connell's quarterback development system unlock something that Indianapolis couldn't access, the Vikings could realistically win 12 or 13 games. A quarterback with Richardson's combination of arm talent and mobility who puts everything together would be an absolute force, the kind of player who elevates an entire offense and makes everyone around him better. On the flip side, if Richardson continues on his current trajectory and proves that the concerns are legitimate and unfixable, this team probably wins 3 or 4 games maximum, securing a premium draft pick that could be used on the next potential franchise quarterback. There's no middle ground with Anthony Richardson. It's boom or bust, championship contender or top 5 draft pick. And frankly, that clarity is valuable for a franchise that has been stuck in mediocrity for far too long. Compare that to the Mac Jones scenario that so many people are advocating for. Jones is the definition of a known quantity at this point in his career. He's a capable NFL starter who can manage games, make the routine throws, and avoid turning the football over at catastrophic rates. If the Vikings bring in Mac Jones, they're probably winning 8 to 10 games, maybe sneaking into the playoffs as a wild card, and then getting absolutely demolished in the first round by a superior opponent. Jones's ceiling is painfully obvious. He's never going to be a top 10 quarterback, never going to carry a team on his back when things get tough, never going to be the reason you win a Super Bowl. But he's also probably not going to single-handedly lose you games, which means you stay trapped in that 7 to 9 win range that prevents you from making meaningful moves to improve the roster. The same logic applies to other veteran options floating around the rumor mill. Jameis Winston? Sure, he brings entertainment value and can sling the ball around, but you know exactly what you're getting. Some spectacular plays mixed with back-breaking turnovers, a .500 record, and an early playoff exit. Joe Flacco? The guy can still play at 60 years old, apparently, but again, you're looking at 8 wins, maybe 9 if everything breaks right, and then a swift playoff elimination. These quarterbacks represent the path of least resistance, the safe choice that protects jobs, but does nothing to actually elevate the franchise. And that's really what this comes down to, isn't it? Job security. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, the Vikings general manager, understands the seat is getting warm. Kevin O'Connell, despite his early success, probably feels some heat as well after the way this season has unfolded. Human nature dictates that when your livelihood is on the line, you gravitate toward the safe option, the choice that keeps you employed for another year, even if it doesn't meaningfully improve your long-term prospects. Trading for Mac Jones and winning 9 or 10 games keeps everyone employed, keeps the fan base from revolting, and kicks the real decision down the road another season. It's the easy way out, and unfortunately, it's probably exactly what's going to happen. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, the young man currently on the Vikings roster who was supposed to be the answer to all these questions, J.J. McCarthy. The Vikings invested the 10th overall pick in the 2024 draft on McCarthy, trading up to secure what they believed was a franchise quarterback who could lead this team for the next decade. The early returns have been absolutely brutal. Through 6 starts as the youngest quarterback in the entire National Football League, McCarthy has looked more like a disaster than a future star, prompting legitimate questions about whether the Vikings completely whiffed on one of the most important draft picks in franchise history. McCarthy's struggles have been comprehensive and concerning. The accuracy issues, the inability to read NFL defenses, the deer in headlights demeanor when facing pressure, all of it has raised serious red flags about his ability to develop into even a competent NFL starter, let alone a franchise quarterback. When the Vikings turned to veteran backup Nick Mullins in certain situations, the offense somehow looked even worse, which either speaks to McCarthy's hidden competence or raises disturbing questions about Kevin O'Connell's scheme and play calling. The situation has become so murky that it's genuinely difficult to separate player failure from coaching failure. However, and this is crucial, writing off a quarterback after 6 starts would be historically premature and potentially disastrous. Remember Bryce Young? The former #1 overall pick looked completely overwhelmed as a rookie, prompting widespread speculation that the Panthers had made a catastrophic mistake. Fast forward to this season, and Young has shown significant improvement, demonstrating that young quarterbacks can and do develop with time and proper coaching. McCarthy deserves the same runway, the same opportunity to grow and learn from his mistakes without the franchise immediately bailing on him in favor of the next shiny object. Consider the context of McCarthy's early starts as well. This wasn't some cushy schedule designed to boost a young quarterback's confidence. McCarthy had to face the Detroit Lions' ferocious pass rush, travel to Lambeau Field twice to face the Green Bay Packers' historically hostile environment, go up against the Baltimore Ravens' elite defense, battle the Chicago Bears' improving unit, and face the Atlanta Falcons' underrated secondary. Compare that gauntlet to other rookie quarterbacks who got to pad their stats against softer competition, and suddenly McCarthy's struggles look a bit more understandable and forgivable. The smart play, the high-variance strategy that actually gives the Vikings a chance at something special, would be to commit fully to J.J. McCarthy as the starter for all 17 games next season. Give him a legitimate opportunity to develop, to learn from his mistakes, to grow into the quarterback the Vikings believed he could become when they drafted him. If it works out and McCarthy develops into a franchise quarterback, congratulations. You've solved the most important position in sports without having to trade away premium assets or tie up massive cap space. If it doesn't work out and McCarthy proves definitively that he's not the answer, the Vikings will likely land a top 5 pick that can be used to draft the next potential franchise quarterback. This is where the Vikings find themselves at a genuine crossroads. They can take the safe route, trade for Mac Jones, or sign another veteran stopgap, win their 8 to 10 games, lose in the playoffs, and run this whole exercise back again next year. Or they can embrace the uncertainty, commit to developing the young quarterback they already invested in, stay open to taking on other high-upside reclamation projects like Anthony Richardson, and accept that the next season might be rocky, but could lead to something truly special. High risk, high reward. The Vikings have been playing it safe for 21 years under the Wilf family ownership, constantly bringing in stopgap quarterbacks like Kirk Cousins who can manage the ship without ever elevating the franchise to championship contention. Here's the grim reality that Vikings fans need to prepare themselves for. Despite all the logical arguments for taking a risk, despite the clear evidence that playing it safe has failed repeatedly, despite everything that makes sense for the long-term health of the franchise, the Vikings are almost certainly going to trade for Mac Jones this offseason. They'll probably give up a 2nd and 4th round pick, grossly overpaying for a quarterback with limited upside. They'll convince themselves that stability and competence at the position is worth sacrificing the potential for greatness. They'll win their 9 games, lose in the wild card round, and everyone will keep their jobs for another year while the franchise remains stuck in perpetual mediocrity. The evidence for this prediction is overwhelming. When front office executives and coaches feel the heat, they default to self-preservation mode. Adolfo Mensa and O'Connell know that bringing in Mac Jones gives them the best chance to win games in September, October, and November, which is when ownership typically decides whether to make changes. Never mind that those regular season wins are ultimately meaningless if they don't translate to playoff success. Never mind that this approach has failed over and over again for this franchise. The incentive structure of the NFL actively discourages the kind of bold risk-taking that could actually transform a franchise, instead rewarding the safe mediocrity that keeps teams trapped in an endless cycle of 7 to 10 win seasons. If the Vikings do go the Mac Jones route, they'll essentially be admitting to their fan base that the J.J. McCarthy pick was a complete disaster, that they botched one of the most important decisions a franchise can make, and that they're more interested in protecting their own jobs than building a championship contender. They'll be telling everyone that they lack the courage to commit to the young quarterback they drafted or to take a swing on a reclamation project like Richardson, who might actually have franchise-altering upside. It would represent everything that's been wrong with this organization for 2 decades. The fear of failure trumping the pursuit of greatness, the preference for comfortable mediocrity over uncomfortable excellence. The Vikings have talent all over this roster. Justin Jefferson is arguably the best wide receiver in football when healthy. The defense has shown flashes of dominance. The infrastructure for success exists, but none of it matters if you can't solve the quarterback position. And you can't solve the quarterback position by constantly settling for guys who aren't good enough to win you a championship. Kirk Cousins was that guy for years, a perfectly fine quarterback who would get you to the playoffs but never over the hump. Mac Jones is the 2025 version of that same mistake, just with a smaller price tag. Anthony Richardson remains the wild card in all of this, the option that nobody wants to talk about seriously because it feels too risky, too uncertain, too likely to blow up in everyone's faces. But sometimes in the NFL, the riskiest move is actually the safest long-term play. Richardson's physical tools are undeniable, the kind of traits you cannot teach and cannot find in most quarterback prospects. His accuracy issues, his decision-making problems, his leadership concerns, these are all real and significant, but they're also fixable, or at least potentially fixable with the right coaching staff and system around him. Kevin O'Connell has proven he can develop quarterbacks and design offenses that maximize their strengths while minimizing their weaknesses. If anyone in the league can unlock Richardson's potential, it might be O'Connell. The parallel between Richardson and McCarthy is worth exploring because they share some striking similarities beyond just being young quarterbacks with significant question marks. Both possess traits that represent either incredibly high ceilings or catastrophically low floors depending on how their development unfolds. Both have looked at times like they might not belong on an NFL field, raising existential questions about their futures in the league. Both require organizational commitment and patience to reach their potential, assuming that potential even exists. The Vikings already invested a first-round pick in one of these guys. Why not double down on the high-variance strategy and bring in another? Vikings fans deserve better than another season of mediocrity, another year of false hope built on regular season wins that ultimately mean nothing. They deserve a front office willing to take real risks in pursuit of something special, coaches secure enough in their abilities to develop young quarterbacks rather than relying on safe veteran options, and ownership willing to accept short-term pain for long-term gain. Unfortunately, based on the patterns we've seen from this organization and the incentive structures that govern NFL decision-making, fans are probably going to get the exact opposite: conservative roster moves, veteran quarterback play that's good enough to keep everyone employed but not good enough to win anything meaningful, and another offseason of wondering what might have been if the franchise had just been willing to take a real swing. The quarterback question hangs over this franchise like a dark cloud, and how the Vikings answer it this offseason will define the next decade of football in Minnesota. Will they finally embrace the uncertainty and commit to finding a true franchise quarterback, whether that's McCarthy developing into the player they hoped he'd be or taking a chance on Richardson's enormous physical potential? Or will they take the easy way out, trade for Mac Jones, win their 9 games, and condemn this franchise to another cycle of frustrating mediocrity? The choice should be obvious, but in the NFL, the obvious choice is rarely the one that gets made. So Vikings fans, buckle up because this offseason is going to be wild. The franchise sits at a genuine crossroads with multiple paths forward and no clear consensus on which direction to take. Anthony Richardson could be available for pennies on the dollar, a high-upside reclamation project that Kevin O'Connell clearly admires and might be able to develop. J.J. McCarthy deserves a real opportunity to prove he can be the franchise quarterback the Vikings drafted him to be. Mac Jones represents the safe option that probably leads nowhere but keeps everyone employed. And there are dozens of other veteran options who could theoretically step in and manage the position without embarrassing themselves. The decision the Vikings make this offseason will reverberate for years to come, determining whether this talented roster finally breaks through to championship contention or remains mired in the frustrating mediocrity that has defined this franchise for too long. One thing is certain. Vikings fans will be watching every move, analyzing every decision, and hoping that finally, after all these years, the front office has the courage to pursue greatness rather than settling for comfortable mediocrity. What do you think, Vikings Nation? Should the team take a swing on Anthony Richardson and his enormous physical potential? Should they commit fully to J.J. McCarthy and give him the full season to develop? Or are you resigned to the Mac Jones reality that seems increasingly inevitable? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this conversation is just getting started. And if you want to stay updated on all the latest Vikings news, rumors, and analysis as this wild offseason unfolds, make sure to smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. This is going to be one of the most important off seasons in franchise history, and you don't want to miss a single development. Let's ride, Vikings fans, because one way or another, next season is going to be absolutely wild.